Hi, we will now discuss paper 2 of variant 1 in 2023 October-November series. There are 22 questions in total, so let's get started. So this is the first question that we have. We have an isosceles triangle. We need to find the missing angle. In an isosceles triangle, we know that two sides are equal. The same way, the sides opposite to those two equal sides will also be equal to each other. The angles opposite to these two equal sides will also be equal to each other, which means that we know that if this is 41, this will also be 41 degrees. Therefore, if I'm to find what x is from 180 degrees, I need to deduct both these 41 degrees, because the angle sum in a triangle is equal to 180 degrees. So this gives us the value of x, so which is equal to 180 minus 41 times 2 is 82. When I deduct it, I get 98 degrees as the value for x. Question 2 is a stem and a leaf diagram. They've also given us what this key represents. So 1/6 represents 16 minutes. And here, it's the time taken by 15 people to complete the race. That is only given here. We're supposed to calculate the mode. The mode is the most popular score. So in this case, the number that repeats the most is the mode. So it's going to be 27, because the 7 repeats 3 times here, which means the 7 is actually 27. So we should be writing it as 27 minutes. The next question is for us to calculate the range. If we are to calculate the range is the difference between the highest score and the lowest score, or the difference between the maximum and the minimum score. So our maximum score will be this one, which is 31. And the smallest score, or the minimum score, will be this, which is 1/6, that makes it 16. Which means we need to find the difference between this 31 and 16, that's the range, which is equal to 15. So 15 is the range for this question. Let's move on to question C. In question C that is given to us, we are supposed to calculate the median. Median is the score in the middle. When you have odd number of scores, we can easily identify the score in the middle. But when you have even number of scores, to identify the score in the middle, we will end up getting 2 scores. So you need to find the average between the 2 scores. So there you need to add the 2 scores and divide it by 2. In this question, it clearly states that we have 15 scores, which means to find the score in the middle, it's going to be we have an odd number of scores, so we can easily identify the score in the middle. So when we have a stem and a leaf diagram, we can cross this out, keep crossing this way. That is, from this side, you're going to cross from the smallest number, and from this side, we're going to cross from the largest number. Smallest, largest, smallest, largest. Likewise, we need to cross them out. Then smallest, largest, smallest, largest, smallest, largest, smallest, largest. So we are left with this 5. This is going to be the median. This 5 represents 25. So 25 is our median. Let's move on to question number 3. We're supposed to find the value of x in this expression. To find what x is, I need to isolate x by taking the plus 3 to the other side. Positive 3 becomes negative 3 when it goes to the other side. So from 8, we need to deduct a 3, which gives you the value of x. So x is equal to a 5. So I can put this 5 here. I can fill the blank. The same way, now 7y is given as is equal to 63. We need to find what 10y is. So for us to do that, if 7y is equal to 63, we're going to find what y is. So I need to take the 7 to the other side. So to take the 7 to the other side, as it's being multiplied, when it goes to the other side, it gets divided. So when 63 is divided by 7, we get the value of y as 9. But the question is asking you to find what 10y is. So for me to find what 10y is, I need to do 10 times the value of y, which is 9, which gives you 90. which means 10y is equal to 90. In question 4, we're given a table and we're supposed to calculate, find the missing numbers given here. To calculate the missing numbers, cost per kilogram and the number of kilograms should be multiplied together to find the total cost. Now in this case, to find the cost of oranges, the cost of 1 kilogram of orange is given to us as $2.35, and the number of kilograms Amir bought is 3.2 kilograms. So for me to find the cost here, I need to times these two together. So I'm going to multiply 2.35 with 3.2. This gives us $7.52. This is going to be the amount spent on oranges. Now I need to fill these two blanks. Now the total cost for oranges and bananas together is $13.54, which means for me to find this amount that is here, I need to deduct the 7.52 from 13.54. So from 13.54, I'm going to deduct the answer that I got previously, which was from 13.54. I'm going to deduct the answer that we got previously, which is 7.52. So I'm going to deduct 7.52 from this. When I deduct it, I end up getting 6.02. This 6.02 is going to be the cost for bananas. But we need to find the cost per kilogram, which means to find the cost per kilogram, this 6.02, we need to divide it by this 2.8 to find the cost per kilogram, because $6.02 is the cost for 2.8 kilograms. That means this answer that I have here, I need to now divide it by 2.8. So this gives us 2.15. So this $2.15 is going to be the cost per kilogram. Let's move on to the next question. Question 5, we're supposed to factorize it. To factorize this, you need to take out all the common terms, or we call it as the highest common factor, and to put the rest within the brackets because we have only two terms here. So when we consider the numbers 42 and 35, they both are in the 7 times table. So I can take the 7 out, and they both have 7m in common. So I'm going to take m out as well. Then the rest, I'm going to put it within the brackets. So when we divide 42mk by the 7m, so in 42, the number of 7s we have is 6 7. So I'm going to put that 6 in. I have taken the m out already, so I have k left. So I'm going to put the k here. In 35, we have 5 7s. The 7 is taken out, so I need to put the 5. You have the minus, and I have taken the m already, so it's going to be only 6k minus 5 inside the brackets. So this will be the answer when we factorize it. The next question is a question that is based on the difference of squares. So when we have the difference of squares, we need to square root them and put the answers that we get within the brackets with a minus and a plus. So I can write this one as h. The square root of 144 is 12. So I can write it as h minus 12 and h plus 12. Let's move on to the next question. In question 6, a scatter diagram is given. So for each of 10 people working in an office, the scatter diagram shows their salary and value of their car. So then the salary and the value of the car is given here. And in the first question, question A, one of these people has a salary of $28,000. Find the value of the car. So the salary is represented by the x-axis. So we need to say where 28,000 is. So this is 20,000, this is 30,000. This is where 28,000 will be. So to find the value of his car, we're going to draw a line until you meet a scatter. So this person's car is going to be of worth $4,800 because this represents 4,800. So that's going to be the value of the car. So that's going to be $4,800. The next question is where another person starts to work in the office. The salary is $54,000 and the value of the car is $6,100. Plot this information on the scatter diagram. So it's $54,000 and $6,100. So $54,000 is going to be somewhere over here, and $6,100, this is 6,000, this is 6,200, so 6,100 will be here. You need to use those two coordinates to plot the point. So it's going to go all the way up like this, and it's going to be here. And when you mark the scatters, you need to make use of crosses to mark that. So this is the cross that we need to put. Let's move on to question C. What type of correlation is shown in the scatter diagram? Now, the way how the crosses are given to us is given as if it's like it has a positive gradient. So when crosses are in this form, like an increasing graph, we call that as a positive correlation. If it's in this form, like a decreasing graph, we call it as a negative correlation. And if it does not form any type of relationship at all, if it's randomly dispersed like this, we say that there is no correlation. So according to our question here, this is going to be positive correlation. So I'm going to write it here. So it's going to be positive correlation. In question 7, the value of 161.20 euros should be converted to Singapore dollars. Now, the two currencies mentioned in the question are dollars and euros. The exchange rate is given to us. So I'm going to make use of a fraction method to solve this. So if we put the dollars at the top, means in the other side of the equation also, you need to put the dollars at the top. And the euros will go to the bottom. So I can write this exchange rate that is given to us in the form of a fraction. So I can write it as 1 Singapore dollar over 0.62 euros. This is equal to, and in the other fraction, I'm supposed to calculate how many Singapore dollars I need to find. I need to find the number of Singapore dollars. So I need to find the numerator, because dollars means I need to put the dollars at the top in the other side as well. And the denominator is known to us, which is 161.20 euros. So when we do using this method, you don't get confused whether to multiply or to divide. So now I need to find what x is. I'm going to cross multiply, or I can simply take this 161.20 euros that is in the denominator to the other side, so that it multiplies with this $1. So the value of x, if we are to find what x is, this 161.20 euros has to be divided by 0.62. So I'm going to now divide 161.120 euros by 0.62. So when I do the division, I get 260, which means this 161.20 euros is the same as 260 Singapore dollars. In question 8, two mixed numbers are being multiplied together. So to solve this, first, you need to convert the mixed fractions or the mixed numbers given to us into improper fractions. To do that, we multiply the whole number that we have here with the denominator and add the numerator to it. So 7 times 11 is 77. We add 3 to that. So when we add that 3, it becomes 80 over 11. You multiply this with 3 times 10 and add this 3. So 3 times 10 is 30. 30 plus 3 is 33. So you get 33 over 10. I'm going to simplify before I multiply, which makes it much more easier. So when we have fractions, in this case, we can simplify the numerator and the denominator of any two fractions or within the same fraction. That means I can divide this 80 and 10. They can be simplified by dividing both by a 10. So this becomes an 8 and this becomes a 1. The same way, I can simplify this 11 and 33 by dividing both by 11 itself. So this 33 becomes 3 and 11 becomes 1. Now the rest I'm going to multiply and do the division. So in the denominator, I have 1 times 1, which is anyways a 1. So 8 times 3 is 24. So 24 over 1 is the same as 24. In question number 9, we're supposed to find the highest common factor for the two numbers given to us. So whether you find the lowest common multiple or the highest common factor, it's best if we can make use of the factor tree method because it's going to be the same way. Or there are other ways to do it as well, but we're going to make use of the factor tree method where this 140, I'm going to divide by prime number. So when I divide by 2, I get 70. Split this further by dividing by 2, I get 35. I can now divide this by a 5, which makes it a 7. The same way, this 126 also has to be divided. When I divide by 2, I get 63. When I split this 63, that is when I divide by 3, I get 21. I can divide this 21 by 3 as well, which gives us a 7, which means this 140 that we have here, I can write this 140 as a product of prime factors as 2 times 2 times 5 times 7. The same way, this 126 also can be written as 2 times 3 times 3 times 7. Now, if I'm to find the highest common factor, I need to start making groups. So in this case, we have 2 and 2, so that makes a group. We do not have any more 2's in 126 to make a group with this 2. We do not have any 3's in this 140 to make a group, so we can skip that. It's the same with 5 as well. So the next group can be formed using the 7's. So this makes 2 times 7, which is equal to 14. So this 14 is the highest common factor of 140 and 126. It's the largest number that can be used to divide both these two numbers. In question number 10, we are asked to simplify n to the power 5 times n. This is equal to n to the power 6 because here the power of n is a 1 even though it's not given. When same bases are multiplied together, you need to add the indices. In this case, you got to do the division. So I can write it as 8x to the power 6. I can write it in the form of a fraction. So it's much more easier for us to understand. So I can start simplifying the 8 and the 2 by dividing both by a 2. So this becomes a 4. Then x to the power 6 and x to the power 2, they are being divided. So when we have division, we need to subtract the indices. So from 6, I need to deduct this 2. So that gives you the answer. 4 divided by 1 is 4. I get x to the power from 6. When I deduct this index 2, I get a 4. So our answer is 4x to the power 4. In question C, we are given 243y to the power 20 to the power of 2/5. So it's like a power of a power. So in the fractional index that we have here, the denominator is a 5. So I'm going to write this 243 so that it gets a power of 5. So that way I can try simplifying with this 5 or a multiple of 5. The power should be a multiple of 5 or 5. So I can write this 243 as 3 to the power 5. And I have y to the power 20. This entire thing will share this fractional index, which is 2/5, which means this 2/5 gets multiplied with this 5 as well as with this 20. So this makes 3 to the power 5 times 2 over 5. And we have y to the power 20 times 2 over 5. So when we simplify this, I can cross out this 5 with this 5 because they both are divisible by 5. I can simplify this 5 and 20 by a 5. So this becomes a 4. Then the terms that are left out is 3 times. Now 3 to the power 1 times 2 is a 2. So that is 3 to the power 2. And then we have y to the power 4 times 2 is 8, which is the same as 3 squared is a 9. So I can write it as 9y to the power 8. Let's move on to question 11. In question 11, this is an inequality question. So we need to keep in mind that the inequality sign will flip only under 2 conditions. That is, when we multiply by a negative number or when we divide by a negative number. Other than that, the inequality sign will not flip. So now we need to solve this. Means you need to find what x is. We solve it just like solving equations, but instead of an equal sign, we will have this inequality sign. So first I'm going to expand this. So this gives us 8x minus 12, which is greater than or equal to 43 plus 3x. I'm going to take all the x's to one side. So I'm going to bring this plus 3x to the left and this and the numbers to the right. So I'm going to take the minus 12 to the right. So this gives us 8x minus 3x, which is greater than or equal to 43 plus 12. So from 8x, when I deduct 3x, this gives me 5x, which is greater than or equal to 43 and 12 makes 55. So now for me to find what x is, I need to divide both the sides by 5. This gives me x is greater than or equal to, when I divide both the sides by 5, this is equal to 11. As I'm dividing by a positive number, the inequality sign will not flip. So this is going to be the answer. Let's move on to question 12. In question 12, a recurring decimal is to be converted to its fraction. So in this recurring decimal, the 2 that we have here is the digit that keeps continuing. So we need to solve this by forming an equation. So I'm going to consider this as x. If the 0.42 recurring 2 is considered as x, I'm going to form another equation. So I'm going to multiply this equation by 10, which becomes 10x is equal to, when I multiply by 10, the decimal point moves 1 unit to the right, which makes it 4.2 recurring. Just like this, I'm also going to multiply this by 100. So when I multiply this first equation by 100, it becomes 100x, which is equal to, I need to multiply the 0.42 recurring also by 100. So the decimal point moves 2 units to the 2 steps to the right, which leaves you with 42.2 recurring. The 2 repeats because after this 2, the 2 with a dot explains that the 2 keeps following. So we know that it's going to be 2 with a dot on top. Now we can clearly see that the 2 recurring and 2 recurring in these 2 equations that we have formed are the same, which means now when we do the subtraction from the bottom equation, if we subtract the equation at the top, we will be able to completely get rid of the decimal part that we have. We couldn't do that using, we cannot do that using the first equation and the second equation, because when we do the subtraction there, still a digit will be there in the, a digit or more digits will be there after the decimal point. That's the reason why we had to create another equation here. Now we're going to do the subtraction. So from 100x, when I deduct 10x, this gives me 90x, which is equal to, from 42.2 recurring, when I deduct 4.2 recurring, this gives me 38, and the decimal part completely removes. Now, if I'm to find what x is, I need to bring the 90 to the other side. It will divide the 38. So this 38 divided by 9 in the simplest form is the same as 19 over 45. So I can divide both the numerator and the denominator by a 2. So I'm asked to write it in the simplest form. So that's why 19 over 45 is the answer. Let's move on to the next question, which is question 20. Question 13. In question 13, at the end of 2021, there were 27,000 rhinos living in the wild. The number of rhinos is expected to decrease exponentially by 3% each year. Work out the number of rhinos expected to be living in the wild 4 years later, that is at the end of 2025. Give your answer correct to the nearest whole number. If we are to do this question, this is a question where it decreases exponentially. Now, the formula that I have written in the side here, which is A is equal to P times 1 plus R over 100 to the power n, is a compound interest formula. The same formula can be used when something increases exponentially. But if something is decreasing exponentially, we need to slightly modify this equation by making the plus into a minus. That means in this case, as it decreases exponentially, I'm going to make use of this formula, which is A is equal to P times 1 minus R over 100 to the power n. The A is the final amount, and that is what we are supposed to calculate. Whereas P is the starting amount, the amount that it started with. In this case, there were 27,000 rhinos in 2021. So I'm going to put that 27,000 here. You multiply that with 1 minus R is the rate, which means the percent, So in this case, it's 3%. So I can write it as 3 over 100. And n is the power, n is the number of years. So in this case, we are supposed to calculate after 4 years. So n is equal to a 4. Now, I'm going to put this in the calculator and see what I end up getting. That will be the final answer. But I need to make sure I round it to the nearest whole number. So I'm going to write 20, I'm going to put 27,000, open the brackets, 1. I need to subtract 3 over 100. I can put all this at once, 3 over 100. And then I need to close the brackets and put the power as a 4. So when I do this, I get 23,902.90587, which means my answer correct to the nearest whole number is 23,903. So my answer is 23,903 rhinos. In question 14, the Venn diagram is given, and each section in this Venn diagram is given in terms of x, and we are supposed to calculate what A intersection B is. But the universal set, the number of elements that belong to the universal set, is given as 52, which means all these regions together will be equal to 52. We need to find what A intersection B is. So for us to find what A intersection B is, first we need to find what x is. So I'm going to add 15, that is this region, and these 3 regions that we have, which is 5x, and then we have x plus 5, and then 12 minus x. So these 4 regions together will be equal to the number of elements in the universal set, which is 52. I'm now going to combine all the like terms together. So I have 5x plus x minus x. So the plus x and the minus x can cancel out, leaving us with 5x, 15 plus 5, and then we have this 12 can be added together, which is equal to 32. So 5x plus 32 is equal to 52. So if I'm to find what 5x is, I need to bring this 32 to the other side. So I need to deduct 32 from 52. So this gives me the answer as 20. And if I'm to find what x is, I need to divide both the sides by 5. So when I divide 20 by 5, the value of x is 4. Now I know what x is. And in the question, we are supposed to find what the number of elements that belong to A intersection B. A intersection B means A is going to be this complete circle. B will be this complete circle. But they have mentioned that it should be intersection. Intersection means the overlapping region. That is where both the colors that I have shaded are overlapping. So it's going to be this region, which is this x plus 5, which means I need to find what x plus 5 is equal to. That will be my answer. We know that x is 4. 4 plus 5 is equal to 9. So 9 is going to be the number of elements that belong to A intersection B. Let's move on to part B. In this question, we are supposed to shade in the region which is C intersection D intersection E. It means that it's going to be the overlapping region for C, D, and E. The overlapping region for C, D, and E is going to be the region in the middle. The way how it should be found is, we are going to first shade in C intersection D. C intersection D will be the region that is overlapping for C and D. So D is going to be this circle. So the region that is overlapping for C and D is the region that we have in the middle here. And now the next step is, we should also shade in E, circle E, because it says for this answer and E, it should be intersection. That means I'm going to shade in circle E as well. So this is going to be the circle. And the question clearly states that it should be intersection for that. That means for the overlapping region that we got previously and for the region that we have shaded in blue, we need to see what's overlapping again. So it will be the region that is in the middle where all 3 colors intersect. So this will be the overlapping region. This is going to be our answer. Let's move on to the next question, which is question 15. We're given a grid here, and 3 inequalities are given to us, and we need to shade in the unwanted region. So for us to shade in the unwanted region, first we need to draw the straight lines for each of these inequalities given to us. So when drawing the straight line, we can replace the inequality sign that we have here with equal signs so that it makes it much more easier for us to understand. So it will be like y is equal to 1. So y is equal to 1 means it should go through the y-axis at 1. So it's going to be a line like this. But this will not be a solid line because we do not have a line under this inequality sign. So due to that reason, this has to be a dashed line. So I'm going to make this into a dashed line. So I'm going to have a dashed line like this. And now it also states that it's going to be the region that is greater than 1. So if y is greater than 1 means everything above 1 should be shaded, but we are expected to shade in the unwanted region. The unwanted region will be the region that is below this. So everything below this has to be shaded. Below this line has to be shaded. This is how it would look like. Then the next equation that we have, the next inequality that we have is x is less than or equal to 2. Forget about the inequality sign for the moment. Think about it as an equal sign and draw the line. So it's like x is equal to 2, which means it passes through 2 in the x-axis. So the line will be like this. And here it will be a solid line. The reason why this is a solid line is because we have a line under. And it states that x is less than or equal to 2. So everything below 2 has to be shaded. So everything below 2 means less than 2. So that is when you have 1, 0, -1, this side should be shaded. But the question is asking us to shade in the unwanted region. As we are supposed to shade in the unwanted region, everything in the right side of it should be shaded, which means this side is the region that we need to shade. The same way, we got to do the same thing for the next equation or the inequality that is given to us, which is y is greater than or equal to x plus 2. Forget about the inequality sign. Think about it as an equal sign. So it will be y is equal to x plus 2. So in that case, the y-intercept for this equation y is equal to x plus 2, this plus 2 is our y-intercept. So as this is the y-intercept, when drawing straight lines, the y-intercept is supposed to be marked first. So the y-intercept is plus 2. So I'm going to mark plus 2. So this is plus 2. And here the slope is 1. The reason is there's no number in front of x, which means we have a 1. That explains that the rise is also 1, the run is also 1, because when finding the slope, we got to do rise over run. So if it's a whole number 1 means I can write that 1 over 1 because any whole number has a denominator of 1. So I can do rise over run. So from this point, rise is 1, run is 1. So I'm going to mark the point here. I'm going to repeat it so that I can mark several points to draw the straight line. Rise over run, rise over run. Likewise, I'm going to mark several points. And now I'm going to connect it with a straight line. So to connect it with a straight line, this is how the straight line would look like. Now that the line is drawn here, which is y is equal to x plus 2, it states that its y is greater than or equal to x plus 2, which means it has to be a solid line because we have a line under, and greater than or equal to x plus 2 means you need to just check only the number that is given here and the symbol. So it's like y is greater than or equal to 2. So greater than or equal to 2 means all the numbers above 2. So above 2 in the y-axis. So it goes as 3, 4, 5, 6. Likewise, it keeps going. But then we are supposed to shade in the unwanted region, which means we are supposed to shade in the region that is below the line. So this is the region that has to be shaded. Now, the question is asking us to denote where the answer will be, where the solution will be by using a letter R. So that is how it's given in the question. So we need to label the region that satisfies all three inequalities using the letter R. So as we shaded in the unwanted regions, the region that is not shaded will be where our solution will be. So this is where our solution is going to be. Let's move on to the next question, which is question 16. We are supposed to calculate the lower bound and the upper bound for P. So here, the equation given to us is P is equal to 2W plus 2H. So if we are to calculate the lower bound as well as the upper bound, then we're going to do the lower bound first and the upper bound next. So in this case, 2w means it's going to be 2 times w, and I have 2 times h. To calculate the lower bound, it should be the lowest possible value. That means both the width, both w and h should be lower values. When calculating the upper bound, both w and h should be both the upper bounds. That is how we can get the maximum possible value for p. Now, in this case, both w and h, the values are given to us. So w is given to us as 11. So if we are to calculate the upper bound and the lower bound for w, both the numbers are rounded to 2 significant figures. Here, the second significant figure is this one that we have here. That means, in this case, that the digit in that column, the second significant figure belongs to the ones column, which means to find what number has to be added or deducted, you need to divide that 1 by a 2, which is 0.5, which means you need to add 0.5 to find the upper bound and deduct 0.5 to find the lower bound. So which will be 11.5 and 10.5. So in this case, we are going to also find what h is. So h is equal to 9.5. That is also given correct to 2 significant figures. But our second significant figure in this case is the 5, which belongs to the 10th column. So the value of the place value of that column is going to be a 10th, which is the same as 0.1. That has to be divided by 2, which is 0.05. This is the amount that has to be added or deducted to calculate the upper bound and the lower bound. So therefore, the upper bound will be 9.55 and the lower bound will be 9.45, which means if we are to calculate the lower bound for P, in this case, it's going to be 2 times the lower bound for W, which is 10.5. We need to add that with 2 times the lower bound for H, which is 9.45. I need to find the answer for this. That will be the lower bound for P. So when I put this in the calculator, I will get the answer as 39.9, which means our lower bound is 39.9. The same way, I'm going to do 2 times W's upper bound. So upper bound of W is 11.5. Add that with 2 times the upper bound of H, which is 9.55. So 9.55, when I multiply this, I get 42.1. Therefore, the lower bound of P is 39.9 and the upper bound of P is 42.1. Let's move on to question 17. In question 17, we are supposed to calculate the value of x, that is this angle. And this is relating the circle theorems. So there are different ways in which we can do this question. So the first thing is, now this angle is given to us as 53 degrees. This is the angle that is between this tangent DE and this chord CB or BC, which means the angle that is formed by the same chord in the alternate segment, which is this one, will be equal to the angle that is formed between the chord and the tangent, which explains that this angle will be 53 degrees as well. So we can do it that way. So I made use of the alternate segment theorem to find this angle here. And we can also make use of the radius and tangent theorem that we have to calculate the missing angle here, and using that as well, we can do it. But I'm going to use this method. Now, I know that this is 53 degrees. Now, this is the angle that is formed on the circumference of the circle. And using the same starting and the ending point, we have the angle that is formed in the center, which is this angle, which will be double the size of the angle that is formed in the circumference. So as this is 53, this angle that we have will be double 53, which is 106 degrees. If we know that this is 106 degrees, then I can calculate the angle around this point, The reason why I can calculate this is because angles around a point makes a total of 360 degrees, and from 360, I can deduct this 106 that I have. So from 360, when I deduct 106, this gives me a total of 254 degrees. This is a reflex angle which is equal to 254 degrees. Now I need to find the value of x. For me to find the value of x, I'm going to make use of this quadrilateral. So that is ACOB quadrilateral. Even though it looks like a triangle, it still has 4 angles. So it has 4 angles and 4 sides. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is still a quadrilateral. So when we add all 4 angles in this quadrilateral, it should be equal to 360 degrees. Which means if I'm to find what x is, from 360 degrees, that is the angle sum of a quadrilateral, I need to deduct these 3 angles that we have, which is 53, 20, and 254. So I'm going to deduct those 3 angles from 360. So from 360, when I deduct 53, 20, and 254, the answer that I end up getting is 33 degrees. This is the value of x. So x is equal to 33 degrees. Let's move on to the next question that we have, which is question 18. In this diagram, we are supposed to calculate the value of y. Now, here already one angle is given to us. Its opposite side is known to us. The side that is opposite to this angle is also known to us, which means we are going to make use of the sine rule to find the value of this y. So according to sine rule, the side has to be written at the top and its corresponding angles is written at the bottom, which means I can write it as sine, or else I can even flip this and, but there's no problem with that. It will still end up giving us the same answer. So I can write it as 16.2 over this side over its sine angle, which is sine 105, which will be the same as we have 8.3, that side is known to us, over sine y. I now need to isolate y. For me to isolate y, when we have 2 fractions on either side of an equal sign, we need to cross multiply to isolate to find the value of the variable. In this case, we will have sine y times 16.2 is equal to 8.3 times sine 105. I'm going to bring this 16.2 to the other side. So that will give me sine y is equal to 8.3 times sine 105 divided by this 16.2. But I'm supposed to find what y is. So I need to do y is the value of the angle. So if I'm to find the value of the angle, I need to do the inverse function of the answer that I get for this, which means I can write this as the inverse function of 8.3 times sine 105 divided by 16.2 has to be found. I'm going to put this in the calculator and see what I get. So I have sine inverse. So sine inverse, the brackets, I'm going to put the fraction mark. I have 8.3. I times that with sine 105. So sine 105, I'm going to close that bracket there because that is the bracket that was open for 105. Then I need to divide that by 16.2. And I opened a bracket here. So let me make it 16.2. And I opened a bracket at the beginning. So I need to close that bracket. So I'm going to put the bracket here. Close the bracket. And this gives me the answer, which is 29.66 degrees. So I will write it to 2 decimal places in this case. So my answer is 29.66 degrees. This is the value of y. Let's move on to the next question. In question 19, we are supposed to sketch the graph y is equal to cos x for the angle that is given from 0 to 360 degrees. Then for us to do this question, now the x-axis is given to us. So I'm going to split this into 4 equal regions. So from 0 to 360, right in the middle, I will have 180. Then this will be 90. And again, I'm going to split this region. So this becomes 270. I need to draw the cos graph. So a cos graph will start at 1, just like I have mentioned here. So it's very important that we know how to draw the sine graph, cos graph, and the tan graph. So these are the basic 3 graphs that we have. Then if I'm to draw this cos graph means, then I need to start from this positive 1. I need to draw the angle like this, draw an arc like this so that it meets at 90. And then it goes to a minimum of -1 when it's at 180 degrees. So it's going to be like this. And then it decreases again and goes to 0 when it's 270 degrees. So it has to be drawn like this. And then again at 360 degrees, it reaches its maximum value, which is +1. So it's going to be somewhere over here. So this is how the graph has to be drawn. So this is the cos graph. The next question, we are supposed to find the reflex angle of x. They've given us in bold letters to find the reflex angle for x. If we are to find what x is an angle. So whenever we find the value of an angle, that is when we make use of inverse, cos, sine, or it can be tan as well. But in this case, they've given us cos x is 0.21, which means for me to find what x is, I need to do the inverse of 0.21. This gives me the value as, so if I do the inverse of cos, so I'm going to do the inverse of cos 0.21. So when I do this, I get the value of the angle as 77.877. So I can round it to 2 decimal places and write it as 77.88 degrees. So 77.88 degrees is an acute angle because it's not a reflex angle. A reflex angle should be an angle that is within the range 180 to 360 degrees, which means for me to find its reflex angle, I need to make use of unit circles. So I have put the diagram in the side here. So I'm going to draw the diagram again. So if I'm to draw the diagram here, so this is the unit circle that we have. When it comes to cos, the first quadrant and the fourth quadrant will be positive. So we can remember this as all silver teacups, which means all 3 signs will be positive in the first quadrant. Silver means sign will be positive in the second quadrant, whereas cos and tan will be negative. And the next one is T, which means tan will be positive. So sine and cos will be negative there. And here it's going to be cups, which means cos is positive, where sine and tan will be negative. So now that we know that this is where these 2 are the quadrants where cos is going to be positive, we can find the value of the angle. The reason why we select the positive quadrants, the regions where cos is positive, is because here the value of cos x is given as 0.21. So this 0.21 is a positive value. So because cos x is a positive value only, we need to make sure to make use of the first and the fourth quadrant. So in the first quadrant, I'm going to mark the angle 77.88 degrees. So we need to start at 0. So from 0 starts here, and 77.88 degrees will be like this angle, which is 77.88 degrees. Now, I need to reflect this into the quadrant where cos is positive. So this is the quadrant where the fourth quadrant is where cos is positive. So when I reflect it across this x-axis, it will be like this, which means I need to now find the value of the angle from 0 all the way up to this point. This is the measure of the angle that I'm supposed to calculate, which means as I reflected this, this angle will also be the same 77.88 degrees. So angle around a circle is equal to 360 degrees. So from 360 degrees, if I deduct this 77.8, I will be able to find the value of the reflex angle. So from 360, if I deduct 77.88, this gives the reflex angle, which is equal to 282.12 degrees. This is the angle that we are supposed to find. Let's move on to the next question, which is question 20. So here, we are given 10x squared minus 60x over x squared minus x minus 30. We need to write this, we need to simplify this and write it as a single fraction. So when we simplify, it's important that we factorize both the numerator as well as the denominator. When we factorize the numerator, we have 10x squared minus 60x. So the highest common factor there is 10x, which means I can take 10 out because 10 is common to both. At the same time, they both have x, so I can take out the x as well. And the rest I'm going to put within the brackets, which is x minus 6. And in the denominator, I need to factorize, and to write the denominator for this will be the answer that I get when I factorize x squared minus x minus 30. So when I have three terms like this, and if I'm to factorize it, in this case, we know that the coefficient of this x squared is a 1. When the coefficient of x squared is a 1, we have an easier way to find the factor pairs. So we need to find the two numbers that multiply together to give you this last number, which is negative 30. At the same time, these two numbers should add together to give us the coefficient of x, which is a negative 1. So then the two numbers that multiply together and give you negative 30 and add together to give us a negative 1 will be negative 6 and positive 5. Now that we know it's going to be negative 6 and 5, we can directly put this within the brackets as the variable that is given here is x. So I'm going to write x with one of this number, which is negative 6. And the same x should be written with another number, the other number that we have, which is 5. So these will be the factor pairs for x squared minus x minus 30. So this can be done only when the coefficient is a 1. So then I'm going to write the denominator now, which is x minus 6 times x plus 5. Now that we have factorized both the numerator and the denominator, both the numerator and the denominator are in the factorized form, I can simplify the terms that are common. So I can cross out this x minus 1 with this x minus 1, which gives us the answer 10x over x plus 5. So this is the answer in the simplest form, and we just have only one fraction there. Let's move on to question B. We need to add these two fractions. So for us to add these two fractions, it's important that the denominators are the same. So here, the denominators are two different denominators, so we need to make it the same. So I'm going to multiply this x plus 3 with this 8x minus 1. I need to do the same thing to its numerator as well. And the next one that I have is 8x minus 1, which I need to multiply by x plus 3. I need to do the same thing to its numerator as well to multiply this 5 by this x minus x plus 3. Now, when I do that, I can write it as 7 times x minus 1. I have plus 5, and then I have x plus 3, and they both will have the same denominator, which is x plus 3 and 8x minus 3. So I'm going to write x plus 3 and 8x minus 1 here. I'm going to expand the numerator, simplify it, and then I'm going to see if I can factorize that, if I can factorize it or not. So when I expand this, I get 7 times 8x, which is 56x. And then I have minus 7, so 56x minus 7. Then using this 5, I need to expand the bracket here, which is plus 5x plus 15 over the denominator, which is x plus 3 and 8x minus 1. Now I can simplify the numerator that I have here, which is by combining all the like terms. So 56x and 5x will give me a total of 61x. Minus 7 and plus 15 will make a total of 8 when I simplify. And this is written over the denominator, which is x plus 3 and 8x minus 1. So this will be the final answer. The reason why this is the final answer is because the numerator cannot be factorized further. If we could factorize the numerator, it's important that we factorize it because there are instances when it can get cancelled out with the denominator. Let's move on to the next question that we have, which is question 21. So this is the question that we have before the last question. So we are given a cuboid and the measurements of the sides AB, BC, and CG are given in the diagram. And also in the question, we are supposed to calculate the angle that the diagonal BH, so the diagonal BH is given here, makes with the face ADHE. ADHE is this face. So this diagonal makes with that face means we need to draw a line from here to here. And this, using this triangle only, we are supposed to find. And this is the angle that you are supposed to find. So for us to find this angle that is given here, so we can imagine as if it's been turned around. So when you imagine as if it's been turned around, it's much more easier for us to understand it. So in this case, I need to find what this angle is. This one will anyways be 90 degrees. The reason is because it's now this side is considered as the base, or we can consider this as the base and this one as the height. So if we turn it this way around, so in that case, it will be perpendicular. Now I need to find the value of this angle. For me to find this, I need to know two of the sides. So one of the side is known to us. I need to find another side for me to find the angle. Only then I can apply trigonometry to find the value of the angle. Now in this case, I need to find what this side is, which is AH. This AH is the same distance as this BG, which means if I find how much BG is, I know that will be the same, that's the same as AH. So I'm going to find what BG is, or I can say it as AH and BG are equal. So to find what BG is, I'm going to make use of this triangle that we have here. Again, this is a right triangle. In this right triangle, BG is the hypotenuse of this right triangle, which means I can apply the Pythagorean theorem to find what BG is. So BG is the hypotenuse. If I'm to find the hypotenuse, I need to square these two shorter sides or the shorter legs given to us, add them together and square root it. If one of the shorter side is missing, that is when from the square of the hypotenuse, you deduct the square of the other shorter leg that is given to us, and then we need to square root it. But here we are supposed to add them up, square them, add them up, and then square root it. So I'm going to write 4.5 squared plus 9.2 squared. And then I need to square root this answer for me to find what AH is. So in this case, we can find what AH is. So when we put this in the calculator, let's see what we get. The square root of 4.5 squared plus 9.2 squared gives us 10.24. That is corrected 2 decimal places. So I will write it as 10.24 centimeters. Now I know what AH is. Using this AH and 15.1, we can calculate the value of this angle. So for this angle, this is the 90-degree angle. So right opposite to this will be the hypotenuse. But the two sides that are known to us are the opposite side. So right opposite to this angle, the side that we have is called as the opposite side. And right next to this angle, the side that the angle is connected with, that is this side, which is not the hypotenuse, is considered as the adjacent side. Which means when we consider trigonometry, so we can remember in short as SOHCAHTOA. In this case, you need to use the trigonometric ratio that involves the opposite side and the adjacent side, which is tan. Now I need to find the value of the angle. So if I'm to do it, so I need to write it as tan theta, is equal to the opposite side, which is 15.1 over the adjacent side. The adjacent side is this 10.24. As I'm supposed to find what this angle is, I need to do the inverse tan for the answer that we have here, which is for the fraction that we have here, which is 15.1 over 10.24. So I can put this in the calculator. So I can put inverse tan and the fraction, which is 15.1 over 10.24. So I'm going to close the brackets and find the answer. If not, sometimes you will not get the value. So this is going to give you 55.857, which means I can write it to 2 decimal places as 55.86 degrees. The standard way to write it is to write it to 3 significant figures, but I'm going to write it to 2 decimal places. So that's going to be equal to 55.86 degrees. This is the value of the angle. Let's move on to the next question that we have, which is the last question. In question 22, we are supposed to calculate the area of this shaded region, and it's mentioned that this diagram ABCD is a rhombus. So this point is very important because if we know that this is a rhombus, we know that the opposite sides and the all 4 sides are equal to each other. At the same time, the opposite angles are equal, which means this side will be 13.6, this will be 13.6, this is 13.6. The same way, this angle will be 41, just like it's given here. There's no need for us to know this angle. We can also find the value of that angle, but that's not required. That's not necessary. Now, in this question, we are supposed to calculate the area of the shaded region, which means to calculate the area of the shaded region, we're going to do it part by, we're going to do for one section and then double it. That is, I'm going to first consider this section that is given here. That is this sector that is given here. When I consider this sector that is given here, if I draw the sector in the side here like this, for this, the angle of the sector is known to us. These 2 sides are known as well. So that is the radius of the circle. That means using this, what I can find is I can calculate the area of the sector. So from the area of the sector, I'm going to deduct the area of this triangle that I have here. So if I deduct the area of the triangle from the sector, it will give me this portion that I have here. We call that portion as the segment. That means if I'm to find the area of the segment, what I'm going to do is, so I'll write it here. So area of the segment, if I'm to find, means from the area of the sector, I need to deduct the area of the triangle. Now, when I do that, I get this portion, which is this region that I have here. This is the unshaded region. The same way, I have another region right on top of that as well, but it's going to be the same thing because the angle and the radii of that circle is also the same, which means I can find the area of the unshaded region by doubling this answer that I get by 2. If I do that, I will be able to find the area of the unwanted region. So in this case, what I'm going to do is unwanted region or the unshaded region. So first, I'm going to work out the area of the sector minus the area of the triangle. So to find the area of the sector, we need to use the formula theta over 360 times pi r squared. This is the area of the sector. From this, I need to deduct the area of the triangle. But in this case, the triangle here, the height is not given to us. We may find the height by using, because this is an isosceles triangle. So because this is an isosceles triangle, we may use the, we may find the perpendicular height. But it's much more easier if we use the other formula that we have for area of the triangle, which is half AB sine C. Here, to calculate the area of triangle, this formula can be used as well, where this C should be the included angle for these two sides A and B, which means it should be in between, the angle should be in between two sides that are given to us. So it's in between this 13.6 and 13.6. So using this, I can calculate the area of this segment. This answer that I get, if I times this answer that I get by 2, this will give me the area of the unshaded region. So that is what I'm trying to find first. So then I'm going to substitute the values and I'm going to put this directly in the calculator and see what I get. The angle is 41 degrees. So I can write it as 41 over 360 times it by pi times, the radius is 13.6. So I need to square that radius. From this, I need to deduct half times AB. A is 13.6. B is also 13.6. Times it by sine C. So sine of the angle is sine 41. And then this answer that I get, I need to times it by 2 because I'm trying to find the area of both these segments. So when I do that, that will give us the area of the unshaded region. I'm going to directly put this in the calculator and see what we end up getting. So then I'm going to open the brackets. Then I'm going to open another one as well and put the fraction here, which is 41 over 360. So 41 over 360. And I need to times it with pi times the radius squared, which is 13.6 square. I'm going to close this bracket. So that is the area of this is to find the area of the sector. From this, I need to deduct the area of the triangle. So I'm going to open the brackets again. The area of the triangle is the formula that we have, which is half AB sine C. The values that we have there was half. So I'm going to put the fraction, put half here, and then I'm going to times it by A, which is 13.6. B is also 13.6. I can write it as 13.6 times 13.6 or 13.6 squared, times it with sine C. So the angle is sine 41 degrees. So I'm going to close the bracket here. Now, when I do this, this is going to close this bracket that we have here. Now, also, I'm going to multiply this answer that I get here by a 2. So we get the answer as 11.0099. So I can write it as 11, or if I want to write it to 2 decimal places, then I can write it as 11.01. So this gives me the area of these two unshaded region, this unshaded region. So that is the area of both the segments. Now I know the area of both the segments. Now what I'm going to do is I need to find the area of the shaded region. Now in this case, I cannot make use of the area of the rhombus formula because I need to know both the diagonals. But in this case, I cannot find the diagonal here. So due to that reason, I do not know the diagonal. So due to that reason, I'm again going to make use of, to calculate the area of the rhombus, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to make use of the area of the triangle and times it by 2. So to find the area of the rhombus, I'm going to calculate the area of the triangle and I'm going to times that by 2. This will give us the area of the rhombus. So we already made use of this formula, which is half times AB sine C. So I'm going to make use of that same thing. So I can write it as 13.6 times 13.6 times sine 41. This answer gives us the area of one triangle. I'm going to times this by 2. So therefore, this will give us the area of the rhombus. So I'm going to put this also in the calculator. So I'm going to do half times 13.6 times 13.6. So I can put it as a square. Then I can times it with sine 41. And I'm going to close the bracket. So this gives us 60.67. I need to times that by 2 because I have two such sections, which will give me 121.344. So I can write it to two decimal places as 121.34. 121.34 centimeters squared is the area of the rhombus. Now I need to calculate the area of the shaded region. If I'm to calculate the area of the shaded region, I need to deduct the area of the unshaded region from the area of the rhombus. So to calculate the area of the shaded region from the area of the rhombus that we found, I need to deduct the area of both segments. I'll write it this way. So now we know the area of the rhombus, which is 121.34 square centimeters. I need to deduct the area of both the segments. The area of both the segments is the same as the unshaded region, which is 11.04. So I'm going to deduct 11.04 from this. So from 121.34, 121.34, I'm going to deduct 11.01. This gives us the area of the shaded region, which is 110.33. So 110.33 square centimeters is the answer. So in this case, the area of both the segments is the same as the area of the unshaded region. It's the same thing. So unshaded region is made out of two segments. So it's the same thing. So this is how we need to work out question 22. So we are done with the last question.